Hi all. A number of you have requested that I make a longer video than my usual fare, and that day has come. So please let me know in the comment section whether you enjoyed it and if you'd like to see more longish form videos like this one in the future. Anyhow, let's get into this video put out by OpenSourceOccultTV. At the time of this recording, his video had 96 likes and 13 dislikes, which is part of the reason I chose it for this video. Not only do I think it's an interesting topic, it seems that his views are shared by quite a few people judging by that like to dislike ratio. I've chopped out parts of his video, but the link to the original will be in the description box if you want to watch it in its entirety so you can see it in its original context. With that being said, let's see what he has to say.
Can we ever, or should we ever, offer condolences to an atheist when they've lost a child or a loved one?
Now, I'm not the most emotional of people on the planet, but if someone lost a child, I would certainly offer my condolences, simply out of respect for them as human beings who are going through an incredibly difficult time in their lives. I wouldn't even think to ask them whether they believed in God or not, because in that circumstance it hardly seems to matter. They are people and they are in pain, so I would want to offer my support. Whether they are atheists or not doesn't matter to me. However, I realize that you're likely posing this as a philosophical argument, and as such I could easily turn this question around on, say, a Christian or a Muslim, who believes that their deceased loved one has gone on to some sort of paradise. For those people, death wouldn't be an ending so much as a new beginning. They might also believe that when their time on this planet is done, they'll join their loved one in this paradise. So unlike someone who might believe that with the death of your brain, your time as a conscious entity is over, a religious person would believe they will see their loved one again. You would think that for most people, losing someone for good is less desirable than believing you'll be reunited in the afterlife. Also, if that loved one has moved on to paradise, wouldn't death be preferable to life?
Didn't you see the x-ray there?
Yeah, but I'm not familiar with all the medical terminology.
Ah.
Oh, thank God. How long do I have before I arrive in heaven, Doc?
Well, that's the bad news. It could be as long as 6 months to a year.
What?
Oh, and just as an aside, that beam of light in the background looks like a heavenly ray. I think God might be on this fellow's side.
No, I'm not trolling. I'm asking a genuine question. And I'm not putting down atheists either. I'd rather people be atheists than be Christians or Jews or Muslims, although I've no problem with you being a Christian, Jew, or Muslim.
Honestly, I find that a little hard to believe considering you're asking whether we should treat atheists with as much dignity and compassion as we would treat anyone else, given that they've just lost a child. I realize that you might intend this to be a mental exercise, but I honestly don't think it's hard to understand why we would offer our condolences and support to anyone who has lost a child. Period.
If an atheist has a child, it has no real love for it. The atheist doesn't feel any love for that child. It believes itself to be going through a chemical response where dopamine receptors and so on, and oxytocin receptors are firing, but they don't actually believe they love the child. They believe it's just an illusion caused by neurochemicals. So, and the child to them is of no real emotional value. The child is purely just a DNA bag of amino acids and proteins and various other vitamins and other forms of electrolytes. That's all that their child is to them. So if their child gets a disease or is, God forbid, killed in an accident, well, why does the atheist care? It's just an unfortunate loss of DNA that they had invested in, and they can go get another piece of DNA.
Okay, so there's quite a bit to unpack here. The first thing I want to point out is how he, like many theists, misunderstand atheism. He assumes that all atheists don't believe in a soul, which just isn't true. Atheism is merely a lack of belief in a god, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether you believe in souls, ghosts, or other supernatural occurrences or states of being. But putting that aside for a moment, he is basically making the argument that because someone doesn't believe in a soul, and might only believe in the physical processes that produce what we experience as love, that the atheist's pain is less than, and therefore less important than, someone who does believe in a soul. I've never understood this line of thinking. I don't understand why so many theists think that something must be eternal, magical, or supernatural in order to have meaning. It doesn't. Whether it's because I have a soul or because of chemical reactions and brain activity, the pain I feel at the loss of a child is no less pertinent or important. He says that the atheist doesn't feel love for their child because they believe it's just dopamine and oxytocin and so forth, which is complete and utter nonsense. I personally don't believe in a soul. I see no evidence for a soul, and I don't even know what function a soul would perform. But I can tell you that even though I believe the feelings associated associated with what we call love are produced physically doesn't lessen my belief in those feelings. I am fully capable of believing in love without believing in the supernatural or a god of any type. And since you mentioned oxytocin, let's have a look at its real-world effects when it comes to paternal feelings as well as empathy. From an article titled 4 Oxytocin Benefits, the love hormone could boost feelings of parental nurturing, enhance spirituality, happiness, according to science. A recent study from Emory University looked at how oxytocin impacts human fathers' brain functions, according to Medical Express. When looking at images of their toddlers, study participants who were administered oxytocin showed significantly increased neural activity in specific mental systems, which are associated with reward and empathy. Lead author James Rilling told Medical Express that these results also suggest that oxytocin, known to play a role in social bonding, might someday be used to normalize deficits in paternal motivation, such as in men suffering from postpartum depression. So, as you can see, oxytocin does play a role in paternal feelings. There is no mention of a soul in these studies, and we don't need to resort to supernatural explanations to study what is happening in our brain when we experience paternal feelings. Furthermore, last year a study revealed that people suffering medical conditions causing low levels of oxytocin performed worse on empathy tasks. These findings suggest that hormone replacement could improve the psychological well-being of those living with low levels of the hormone, Medical Daily reported. It may also help people with autism spectrum disorder who have trouble negotiating social situations. Again, no mention of a soul, and we find that oxytocin may profoundly impact our ability to empathize with others. But what I want you to take away from this segment of the video, Occult TV, is that it's not an illusion. Atheists don't believe their feelings are an illusion, and whether or not they are caused by chemical reactions is irrelevant, because we do feel them and we do experience those feelings. Also, your attempt to break people down into their chemical components in order to argue that they don't matter to the atheist is pretty low. While I believe my girlfriend is a brain, flesh, chemicals, etc., that in no way diminishes her worth in my eyes. I don't sit around thinking about her chemical components. She's a human being and I love her. Let's move on to the next part of your video I want to address.
Likewise, you women who are married to atheistic guys and you think, oh, he's so clever, he's so smart, I love him. Remember, that atheist guy doesn't love you back. He just believes himself to be going through a chemical response to you that may be sexual, or he maybe just have just sized you up for as being a future donor of DNA for him to create those micro bags of DNA to ensure his heritage that he won't love either.
Alright, so again, you're trying to take something that is rather complex, sexual attraction in this case, and simplify it so that you can devalue it. Just because you don't like the facts of how humans choose mates doesn't make it not true. Just because you don't find the process sexy enough doesn't mean that you can just pretend it's supernatural in origin. How we choose sexual partners and the stages of love we experience are rather well known scientifically. For example, what's happening in our brains? My colleagues and I have now put over 100 people in a brain scanner looking to see what happens in the brain. In the first study, I put 17 people into the brain scanner who were madly in love. We found activity in a lot of brain regions. The main brain region where we saw action is called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA. It's a brain region that actually makes dopamine and sends it to other brain regions, giving you that focus, that motivation, that energy, and that craving. What's really going on is it's a basic mating drive that evolved millions of years ago to enable us to focus our mating energy on just one individual and start the mating process. We also understand the 3 basic phases of falling in love, which are lust, attraction, and attachment. Here's the last stage, just to demonstrate the different processes that can take place. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to read about the other 2 phases. Stage 3, attachment. This is what takes over after the attraction stage if a relationship is going to last. People couldn't possibly stay in the attraction stage forever, otherwise they'd never get any work done. Attachment is a longer lasting commitment and is the bond that keeps couples together when they go on to have children. Important in this stage are 2 hormones released by the nervous system, which are thought to play a role in social attachments. Oxytocin, this is released by the hypothalamus gland during childbirth, and also helps the breast express milk. It helps cement the strong bond between mother and child. It is also released by both sexes during orgasm, and it is thought that it promotes bonding when adults are intimate. The theory goes that the more sex a couple has, the deeper their bond becomes. Vasopressin, another important chemical in the long-term commitment stage. It is an important controller of the kidney, and its role in long-term relationships was discovered when scientists looked at the prairie vole. And again, just because these chemicals play a role in our feelings doesn't mean they are any less valuable, or that it devalues the conscious experience we call love. On to your next part.
Now, I don't put down anyone who's an atheist. That's your own business. Good luck to you. But I would like to know how atheists rationalize this if you are indeed one. Why do you believe that I or someone else should give you condolences when someone close to you, like a child or a family member, dies? Why do you deserve it when you've detached yourself emotionally from them and see your own children and partner as just a bag of soulless DNA, proteins, molecules, electrolytes, acids, amino acids, and proteins. There's nothing else to you. Why should I bother giving you condolences? Why? I will anyway, out of my human decency, but
You basically answer your own question at the end of that clip. But that aside, I don't necessarily think you should. That's a value statement, and it's up to you whether or not you choose to offer condolences to someone who just lost a loved one. I certainly would, because I'm able to empathize with other people, and I want to acknowledge their pain and offer my support. Whether or not their pain is due to having a soul or a chemical reaction is irrelevant. They are feeling that pain, and as a fellow human being, I want to lessen or help them through that pain if I can. That you have a hard time grasping this makes me question your capacity to empathize with others.
Is atheism anti-life and anti-human when it reduces, and then let's say things like, well, the magnificence of the universe and all this, fair enough, I agree with all that. When I hear someone like Brian Cox talk about the wonders of the universe and the magic of nature, I'm totally down with that, 100%. And then he says things like, we don't have souls and we don't have spiritual experiences.
Why would studying and understanding the human condition without invoking supernatural elements lessen the value of human beings? If you believe we have a soul, that's your prerogative. If you want me to believe it, then you have to produce evidence. Throughout this video, you have provided zero evidence for having a soul. You have not even explained what function this soul would fulfill. You've merely used emotional appeals to argue that having a soul would be nice because you think it would bring more meaning to the emotion we call love. Well, reality isn't always sunshine and candy canes. And if you want to discuss spiritual experiences, you can certainly find atheists talking about such things. For example, Sam Harris has written a lot about spirituality. In order to discuss such a topic, you'd have to define what you mean by spirituality. It's a nebulous term. For example, I could say that eating my favorite ice cream is a spiritual experience, while someone else might mean something like mindfulness exercises as a path to spirituality.
All you clever genius atheists, if your child dies of a horrific disease, why should we offer you condolences when it's just to you, at worst, a financial loss?
Saying that losing a child is at worst a financial loss is unbelievably callous and shows a complete lack of empathy on your part. You failed. You failed to show why a soul is necessary. You failed to define atheism correctly. You failed to understand why we have feelings or why they are important. And you failed to show empathy for your fellow human beings. Anyhow, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and please leave your thoughts and comments below. Take care and cheers.